Hello and welcome to Yuma. My name is Tina Clark and I am the archaeologist and historian for the Yuma Crossing National Heritage Area. We are here at the narrows of the Colorado River. The mighty Colorado River, as it was called, was 100 times what it is today. And it was a major obstacle for westward expansion. Most people back in the day couldn't swim. There was a rope ferry here, and it was a thriving business during the gold rush. The famous ferryman, Louis Yeager, set up the ferry, and that was more or less the permanent ferry, and his rope ferry was built so that wagons, teams of horses, individuals would not have to brave trying to get across the river. The gold rush is what really put Yuma on the map. We're also right on the site of the first railroad headed west from California, and that magic date was 1877. So again, we have the obstacle of the Colorado River. How are they going to engineer a great big steam engine getting across the river and allowing riverboats at the same little narrows? They were ingenious. They built what was known as a swing span pivot bridge. So when the bridge was open, riverboats could pass. When it was closed, it held huge trains, steam engines, a lot of weight. If we're going to talk about the Yuma crossing, we really need to talk about the earliest use of the Yuma crossing. And that would be by the native people of Arizona and California. Yuma is lucky to have across the river our neighbor, and very important to our community, known as the Quetzon Indian tribe. They are flood irrigation farmers, and lo and behold, the U.S. Army came in and really changed their tribal ways in many ways. Fort Yuma was built to protect the narrows of the Colorado River. And the tribe and the soldiers, the U.S. Army, were really at odds with one another. They became really important to the development of Yuma, and most importantly, the history of farming here in Yuma. And they brought the desert to life. So when the U.S. Army came on its westward expansion, they couldn't believe the riverfront here at Yuma. It looked like the Garden of Eden. So one of the very most incredible stories to me is one of the first non-native arrivals. And that was in 1775, 1776. Juan Bautista de Anza brought through Yuma to the crossing 100 married couples and some accompanying military. He had an assignment, and that was to make his way to San Francisco and colonize San Francisco. One of his biggest obstacles, again, was the Colorado River. So when the Anza expedition arrived, it was in December, the Quetzon tribe really did welcome this band of adventurers. So Anza was able to take care of his charges, his 100 married couples. There was even one baby born on the trail on the way. And the tribe embraced him, helped him, supplied him. So not only did Anza come through, But blazing this trail, we all the way up until the gold rush, we had even Spanish soldiers that followed Anza. They really did invade and change the tribe. Welcome to the Yuma Territorial Prison State Historic Park. Behind me, we have the guard tower. It is really the icon photograph of the prison. So the history of the Territorial Prison is that it opened in 1875. About 6 prisoners were being held in the downtown jail, and every day they came up and built their own cells out of granite. They built 2 cells. Each cell would hold 6 men. Throughout its 30-year history, the Territorial Prison housed over 3,000 men and over 30 women. This is the group that really helped open the West. These are the bank robbers. These are the settlers. These are the cattle rustlers. Everything you ever watched on an old movie. What happened to those lawbreakers? They ended up here in granite cells. And the lore of the Territorial Prison goes on and on. It personifies the Old West. In a way, the prison is a shadow of what it once was. It was surrounded by 18-foot-high adobe walls that were like 12 feet at the base, and they came up 18 feet. And there was really a sidewalk that surrounded the entire prison, and that was where the guards, right here at the guard tower, they would get on a little walkway and they could patrol the entire perimeter of the prison. They always carried a rifle. A couple of occasions, the rifle was absolutely dropped into the exercise yard of the prisoners. And in fact, the prisoners got on one another's shoulders and passed the gun up. It closed in 1909. And the wonderful part of the story is that Yuma did not have a high school. And the first, 20 students in 1910 had classrooms in the old hospital here at the prison. The early football team went and played a football game and were winning, and the crowd started chanting "criminals." So today, Yuma High, they're still known as the Yuma High Criminals. I want to welcome you to one of the most haunted sites in Arizona. We are standing in the Yuma Territorial Prison Cemetery. Beneath our feet here, we have 111 prisoners, just 1 woman. 3 of them were actually shot by prison guards. Most of them died of natural causes, and I would say that tuberculosis was the #1 killer in the Territorial Prison. This site being haunted, it's really open to the public 24/7. The Yuma Territorial Prison itself was listed as the most haunted site in the United States. For its time, it was looked at as a very progressive place. They had the first library in Arizona, so if you were a prisoner and you came and could not read or write, by the end of your sentence, when it was up, you went off with reading and writing that you could put on your resume. It was a humane place, maybe not by today's standards, but they had an exercise yard. They did work at the prison. They helped build the cells. Having the first library in Arizona, the prisoners were educated if they chose to be, And many, after the prisoners around 4:30, they were locked in their cells, the general public in Yuma could come up and use the library. So back in the day, it was considered a very progressive institution. Well, here we are in the former city landfill, 120 acres, that has been restored, cleaned up, and we have a huge park right on the Colorado River called the West Wetlands Park. Literally thousands of volunteer hours that cleaned up the former landfill. When I first saw this 20 years ago, there were hulks of old cars rusting in piles on this beautiful riverfront land. So the community said, that's not our town. We are going to turn it into a regional park, which they have done. And some of those volunteers that fell in love with the site was our local Mormon church. And they raised their own funds to tell the story of the Army of the West. There were over 500 soldiers that started on the East Coast, and literally many of them walked 2,100 miles to get to California. We are standing in front of a statue here that depicts not just an individual, but the theme of the young men that left home on the East Coast. Their whole journey was 2,100 miles. Most of the young men, over 500 of them, by the time they got here, their shoes were walked off. They were barefoot. They were hungry. And this is a group of people that had fortitude, stamina, and a mission, and they completed the mission. They had some wagons. They crossed and forded the Colorado River. They floated the wagons across. They gathered whatever food they could in the desert. By the time they got to California, many of them died on the way. So we have this community spirit that did not want to forget the Army of the West. This is every man depicted on this statue, and it is really the feel of the barefoot soldier with his bedroll and heart and soul to get to California.